Good afternoon, ladies and gents. It's the 26th of April, 2025, and I'm not sure if this is the final part, but this is part three, which I'm going to try and keep short or as short as possible, where we'll discuss some, but not all of the those items that you should be thinking about, um, including into your 72-hour emergency preparedness pack. We'll cover the main default items that you should have no matter what. And then it's down to you. It's down to your location. It's down to the possible threats, who you're responsible for, and also your plan. I'm just going to throw up some slides just to keep the screen active, guys. Right. Before we get into this, and people start getting confused, when talking about the 72-hour emergency preparedness pack, I need you to know that there are similar packs, bags, and box sets out there with similar names. So don't get too confused about it. They're all pretty much the same thing, or they have the same contents. But if you're not sure, and you want sort of other ideas, just look up the 72-hour, or just Google 72-hour emergency preparedness pack, box, or bag. There are emergency bags, survival bags, go bags, grab bags, and bug out bags. So you can call it what you like, but the bottom line is you need to have a box at home with essential items in to allow you to live and function over a 3-day period. In this case, um, when I say this case, what I'm saying is what we're talking about today is the 72-hour emergency preparedness pack. So in this case, that's what we're talking about. However, when these guys put this advice and recommendations out there, they're not really telling you, not specifically what what we're planning and preparing for. Um, you may want to put these items into a bag instead of a box at home, so that if you do have to leave the property, then you can just simply grab the bag and go. And of course, are you staying at home, or are you going to another location, or bugging out in the field? We'll talk about a couple of those items, or those options, and the items, because there's going to be a difference um, in terms of the contents of the box or the different types of bags. I'm not going to cover them all because they're all pretty much the same. I just want to make sure that we've got all of the default items in there, as well as the other items that you may need to kind of get you through that crisis. Right, let's just move on. We're going to use a couple of scenarios, kind of like simulations, and I'll use me and my family as bait to explain sort of what we would and could do to help us get through the first 3 days of a crisis. I've said the first 3 days of a crisis because, we simply don't know how long an SHTF crisis is going to last. And it's always better to plan beyond suggested recommendations in terms of timescales. So just briefly, we're a family of five, mum, dad, and three kids. Two of the kids are 18 plus, and the youngest is 16. There's me, my son, the missus, and two daughters. That's the family unit, and we're located in the UK. We're not living in any major city, and it's a little more rural, but we don't have to go far to be in the thick of it. We're located inland, so not on the coast. And the reason why I'm giving you these details is because, as mentioned in the previous video, everyone's situations they're going to be different, and rather than me try to sort of provide advice on multiple possibilities, because we'd be here all day, it's just easier from so both, well, it's easier for me and you to sort of picture something that's kind of not real, but apparent. You'll hopefully be able to adapt our plan, let's say, to suit your environment and your requirements. Enough of that. Just let's just have a look at what we're talking about now. Before we move on, I've mentioned having supplies in a box or a bag. And there's a good reason for that. It's going to depend on the threat in terms of the threat type, the location of the threat. And from that information, you should be able to gauge the possible impacts. So, for example, let's just keep it simple, a power outage. Guys, when I talk about these threats, I'm not talking about normal everyday sort of power outage that many of us would have experienced, normally resolved within a few hours or restored on the same day. Let's look at a power outage for a minimum of 72 hours. Back to the planned test or unplanned power outage, depending on the severity of the outage, will depend whether or not this would affect the local water utility provider. If it does, then we'll experience the loss of both power and water. See, water providers require power to filtrate, to filtrate or filter, treat, and pump the water out to its customers. So just forget about the power outage actually for a second. Let's just say that your local water provider has announced that the water source in your area has been infected, and they've instructed you to not use any water out of the taps. So, number one, water, without a doubt, has to be at the top of your list. In this scenario, everyone's going to go to their local supermarket and shops to purchase bottled water. The question on everyone's mind is going to be, how long is this outage going to last? If you don't know the answer to that question, then how long are you planning for? Well, having 3 days or enough water for 72 hours is a good start. And that's enough time for your local authorities to kickstart their emergency contingency plans. The utility providers will also have action plans for said scenarios, which could be, I don't know, delivering bottled water to local residents and or the deployment of tankers going to the residents' sort of homes, who can then fill up their bottles from the tank, all of which can be put into place within the first 3 days. So in this situation, 72 hours can make sense, but you are relying heavily on the utility provider to come to your aid at some point within those 3 days. Right, so this is my plan. Or this is my plan actually. This is kind of what I've got going. I live not too far away from a couple of reservoirs, and I could collect water from there. I've purchased life straws, which are sort of water filtration straws. I've got one for, I believe, each member of my family. I've also purchased an amount of water purification tablets, but I need more. And we're also going to be investing in water butts and containers for water storage. Those items will allow us to collect water from source somewhere, filtrate and purify it, and then we're good to go. But there are also sort of items that can go into a go bag, excluding the water butts, obviously, because of the size of those things. If we need to bug out, then, those things can already be in the bag or the box or whatever. With water filtration and treatment, you can extract water from rivers and canals, or anywhere, wherever there's water. Those life stores are pretty good. So I would highly recommend those. I've done a couple of videos on water collection, filtration, purification, and storage. So go and take a look at those. The reason why we're looking at possibly sourcing our own water, if needed, is because going back to the beginning of this session, we mentioned panic buyers. I've done a couple of videos on two threats closer to home that you're all going to have to contend with. That is all of those suffering from normalcy or normality bias who, off the back of that, will quickly become panic buyers and will cause havoc in the shops, having a direct impact on you and your family. So make sure your plan can work around that mad bunch, because you don't want to be invited to their party. If you go to the supermarkets and the shelves have all been cleared and there's no water coming out of the taps, you'll find that your own panic will start to set in at home quickly. So please understand the importance of what I'm saying. Do not think that this situation cannot happen to you, and or the government are going to, come running straight away, because without water, you're finished. Moving on to the second most important item, excuse me, sorry, that you have packed, or you should have packed, or you will have packed, is food. Now, this subject is a big item because there are many different types of food and methods. Again, I've done a couple of videos on water and food preparation. There are factors to consider here, and again, that depends on the scenario and the situation or your situation. If we're talking about a power cut, then forget about perishable foods that need a fridge freezer or fridge freezer or in the fridge to keep fresh. Um, you will need to think about the types of food, storage amounts, and also cooking it. Without power, obviously, your electric cooker, microwave, and air fryers are rendered useless. If you have a gas cooker, though, then you should be fine, depending on whether your gas provider or utility provider has also been impacted by the power cut. You're going to need to plan and prepare how you're going to cook your food. But moving on to food, I've broken the food types down into 4 tiers. Tier one food is freeze dried food. It's got a long shelf life. It's easy to cook. Some of it actually tastes quite good, but it's expensive. Tier two foods are dehydrated food, whether that be complete meals and or sort of food items. You'll need to sort of consider the process and also purchasing the dehydrator or the dehydration sort of, well, the dehydrating or the dehydrator machine, and also the bags that you seal, that you can seal it all in. Um, then you're gonna have your tier three foods, which are meals in tins. They're convenient and they can be eaten cold if you have no sort of other means of heating them up. Tin foods or tin meals can be sort of planned around your budget so you can get kind of the more expensive stuff and the not so expensive stuff. Um, Depending on your budget, basically. We have a very, very tight budget, but we've got a mix of both. And in most cases, you will find that you'll get at least 1 to 2 years shelf life for most of your sort of tins. And finally, we have tier four foods. Tier four foods for me is kind of a last resort. It's going to be things like bags of pasta, rice, grains, beans, and such like. Bags of pasta and rice have a long shelf life, but without a doubt will need cooking. If you're actually into your cooking, then tier four foods aren't going to be a problem, especially when you pull in things like seasoning and spices as well as other foods. So the meals can be good. So at the moment, for me and my family, I'm concentrating on tier three and tier four, as our available budget, as I've said, is very, very tight. If we can purchase a couple of tins a week and grab a 5 kilo bag of pasta out of Sainsbury's or Tesco's for £4, then that's a start. Over time, your food bank will start to grow. We also bought last year a food dehydrator or dehydrating machine. And once we can afford it, we'll move on to creating and preparing full meals to dehydrate. So that is where we're at with the food. I would like, actually, ideally, to have 420 tinned meals. That's the goal at the moment, and that's what I'm kind of working towards. So that's giving all five of us 3 tinned meals per day for a 1 month period. That would be ideal for me. That's what I'm working for. That's what I'm working towards first. Yeah, I'm nearly there, but that's where we're going. Whilst sort of continuing, to get pasta and rice when we can. Um, but again, like I say, it's a very tight budget, so it's slower than I'd like it to be. I've also created a 2 month menu on a spreadsheet of meals or 4 meals. But there's sort of, when I say meals, we're talking things like spaghetti bolognese, chili con carne, beef hot pot, curries, stews, and others. So, some of the family favorites, which we're going to dehydrate at some point. So when it comes to food, guys, it's really going to be down to you. How many are you feeding? What is your budget? And what foods are a preference for you lot? The preparedness packs and bags are going to include many different items that can get you out of trouble. But of course, this all depends on whether or not you're staying at home and bugging in, or you're choosing to bug out. If you're bugging out, where are you going? Where are you sleeping? What are the conditions? Will you have access to additional tools and kit and supplies? But more importantly, why have you chosen to bug out? Especially off the back of something like a power cut. As a bare minimum, I would make sure you have the following sort of other items. This is other items that I would strongly suggest that you definitely have to consider in your box bag or whatever it is that you're going to contain these items in. Um, right, so the one I'm going to move on to is medication. So these next items, they come into play in many sort of different preparedness packs, and are all important in their own right, to be fair. But I've got to start with medication. Certainly, if there are family members with, I don't know, conditions that need to be addressed with meds, or there are allergies in the family, or some might simply be prone to sort of hay fever and coughs and colds, which ideally need addressing. Make sure you can stock up on medications if possible. See, the medications are not cheap, so that's again, and I'm not sure. I'm not even on medications yet. It's not critical within this family. We don't rely heavily on meds. Although if all of these issues continue around the world, we'll all be on meds before we know it. But now, on a serious note, just make sure that you can stock up on the medications if possible, and include with that a basic or advanced first aid kit as well. We then have things like heat and how are you going to keep yourself warm? Um, you know, if you're at home without heating, or if you're bugging out. Right, for me, I have a very small wood stove. Ideally, just for me when I'm out in the field. But we can cook on it and heat up water on it, or a larger campfire can actually be made to cater for larger tasks. When I say larger tasks, if you're cooking for five, or heating, if you want to all keep warm and you're outside, you've bugged out, then the wood stove's not going to do much in terms of keeping you warm. This is entirely up to you though. But I would not be going off to the local garage or the garden centre anytime soon and just purchasing wood for a stove, which come all nicely sort of cut up and packed. Um, if it's needed, and we're talking about an emergency here, there are plenty of trees around here and dead sort of wood that we can use, and we can cut down when it's actually needed. So it's not taking up any space at home until the day. That may not be the case if you're in the thick of a city life, and therefore storing wood, if in fact you can even use a wood stove, that will be needed. You're going to need to sort of store that somewhere. This might be an example of wanting to bug out when living in a city. You might choose to get out of the city. Therefore, we need to be referring to a bug out survival bag instead of an emergency preparation box at home, which of course can be thrown in your car. If you have to bug out. So what I'm trying to say is, if you've got the emergency preparation box at home, and you have to bug out and you have got a car, just pick up the box and go. Make sure that you have matches, lighters, or other sort of fire lighting methods to light either the wood stove, or make a makeshift sort of fire in the open. I would definitely look at including some form of item which allows you to cook or heat up your food, and allow you to sort of heat up water as well, to wash with, and also to make up some hot drinks. In the forces, morale is key for yourself and for those around you, like your family. Being cold, not being able to wash nor flush your ones and twos down the toilet at home, put on, nice clean clothes or eat hot food and have a nice hot drink will definitely bring your spirits down, which you don't want during a shitty period. The next one, I'm going to move on to what I think is important next, and that is sanitation. This will mean items such as toilet paper. And you better get your stocks in before the crazies come out again. I would want to include wet wipes into this category, because the sanitation, or with sanitation, has to be hygiene. Again, keeping yourself clean and tidy will keep your spirits and morale up. Hygiene and sanitation also all depends on whether you have running water or not. If you don't, then you're going to have additional challenges. You'll have to, without a doubt, im- well, this is what I would be looking at. I would have to be looking at employing water rationing, making sure that each person is getting X amount per day for drinking, washing, cleaning, and sanitation. Not being able to flush the toilet is going to cause most of you a headache. Not me, but a lot of people a headache because, well, they're used to not being without that function, shall we say. Even if you have a shitload of bottled water, excuse the pun, which might get rid of those number ones and number twos from the toilet. But over time, along with everyone else's, that lot's going to build up in the sewage system outside your homes. Just be very conscious and mindful of this because the last thing you want is to be encouraging rats and other vermin to the neighborhood and also encouraging a bad smell. So, for some of you, you might be saying, well, what do we do about sanitation then? Personally, number one can go down the toilet and washed away with a small amount of water a couple of times a day. But for any of you that have dogs, you'll know what to do with the number twos. Simply do those in a bag, seal it, and then dispose of it. Remember, guys, all of these suggestions are going to be based on the situation that we find ourselves in, but we must consider the timelines. How long are we going to be in this said situation? And we might not sort of know the answer to that question, so try and plan ahead. And for the long haul, what I'm trying to say is to just plan for longer than maybe what people are suggesting or recommending. If the fix to the problem is out of your control, then just plan ahead. Right, if for some reason we've lost water and we can't sort of flush the toilet, then the number twos, they're going to be done in a bag. Seal the bag tight once you've cleaned yourself up and dispose of it outside of the house, sort of in a wheelie bin or wherever. Remember, guys, we're only talking about 3 or 4 days in this situation, so there's going to be nothing to worry about. But if 3 or 4 days starts to sort of turn into weeks, then you're going to have to make sure you've got a plan to remove the waste and put it in a different place. I'm not going to go into that now. We're just talking about items, and that's going to be, items to go in the box or the bag. Now, now you're all sort of watered and fed, clean and tidy, and sort of nice and warm. We can move on to the other items, but before we do this, I have to mention that we, as a family, we also have 2 small dogs and 2 cats. So we'll need to consider enough drinking water for them and enough food in stock so that they can be fed. For me, I just want to get this out there and out the way because instead of a torch for light in the home, this is staying at home. I've purchased some 200-hour long life candles, which is about 8.5 days, I think, of continuous burning per candle. So in essence, the torch isn't needed whilst at home. Of course, I've got torches, and what I'm talking about here is the bare minimums first. And again, you'll need matches or a lighter, of some sort to sort of deal with candles. I just would suggest that you have at least one torch at home. It doesn't need to be a big torch or anything like that, but make sure you've got some spare batteries for that. And on top of this, we have a box of glow sticks. A box of 30, I think there's 30 in the box. Each of them giving off light for up to 12 hours, which can be used anywhere. They're lightweight, they're cheap, and that's good enough for an emergency light. Moving on to communication, it seems that an AM or FM radio and power bank chargers with spare batteries for torches and phones are mentioned in all advised packs that I've seen. When I say about these packs, these are the ones that the governments are suggesting and also companies and outlets and all that. In fact, on some of those booklets, as you would have seen on the video before this, The government booklets are actually suggesting power bank chargers and radios before water and food in their list, but we won't get into that. You'll need to know, obviously, what's going on in your area during a crisis for updates and other news, allowing you and your family unit, obviously, to make critical decisions and then plan for the days ahead. Um, I actually haven't bought one of these portable AM/FM radios yet, but I'm gonna. I definitely want one. But I'm looking at these ones that have got the power hand crank handle on them, so they can be manually powered and an integrated LED torch as well. So at least if you have got a torch and it runs out of batteries, you can turn the hand crank on this radio and you've got a torch, or you can listen to news updates on the radio. I now want to move away from this pack just slightly, just for a minute, because all of the governments are issuing this advice and information sort of out there to its populations. They've included other sort of items in, in those recommended packs, which they seem to be consistent across all of the European governments. So what I'm trying to say is there's items in their list that they're all mentioning. Um, this will make sense in a minute. They mention items such as a knife, either and or a multi-tool kind of knife or a survival knife. They mention a tin opener, a whistle, and things like important documents, cash, cards, spare keys, duct tape, sewing kit, and other sort of outdoorsy items. I would be putting such items into a survival bug out bag with a view of leaving home. So when these governments are talking about this 72-hour emergency preparation pack, I have to ask the same question again, and that is, what type of emergency are they talking about? See, it depends on what the likely threats are, which the governments must have based these pack recommendations off of, I would have thought. As mentioned, though, in the last video, it's okay publishing this advice and telling 450 million Europeans to start thinking about having this emergency pack and ready at home. But we have to look at, again, at those sort of possible threats that I've spoken about. If it's a cyber attack on critical infrastructure such as electricity and water, then I don't need a whistle and I don't need a sewing kit or a survival knife, as I have those items at home. However, if you're talking about a sort of conventional missile attack on a target not far from your place of residence, then you're going to need a bug out bag or bug out bag, grab bag, or something like that. If you have a secondary location to go to, if you're privileged to have a second location, then that place could be stocked up with all of the essential items. And if you don't, and you're forced to sort of bug out outside in a tent or similar, then quite frankly, you're going to need that other kit. See, that's why I'm not happy with some of this advice. And of course, as human beings, have to think for ourselves and plan accordingly, which of course is difficult when the government is telling you nothing. So, like I've said in many videos, I'm here to provide you with information on what's going on around the world, what the possible threats are, and whether or not it's likely to affect you and your family. If so, then I also advise on some preparation that you'll definitely need to be thinking about, whether that be panic buyers, a cyber attack on the electricity grid, a sabotage on our water supply, or a tactical ballistic missile hitting a counterforce or countervalue target not far from your residence. Your emergency preparedness pack will be different to your next door neighbors. And unfortunately, you will find, and this is sad to say, but you will find at least 85% of your population in your country will not, they won't even bother preparing. So you'll also have that lot to deal with. If you need to leave your residence in an emergency, then your emergency bug out grab bag will definitely be different to the next person's. You may have to leave on foot or attempt the car, only to be caught up on the roads or gridlocked with everyone else who had the same idea as you. You may need just a small bag for a 15-mile walk or hike to a second location where you have all your preps. Or you might have a simple box in your cupboard with exactly the list of items recommended by the government. See, ladies and gents, none of us, we don't want even to be in this sort of situation or into this in this sort of position. But sometimes those heads will need to be pulled out of those arses, and a reality check is needed. Also, remember this: you might not be in control of tariffs, war plans, and panic buyers, but you are, and you can be in control of your own life. So just take a grip of this small task and get, at the very least, a 72-hour emergency preparedness pack that suits the needs for you and those that you're responsible for. This is my recommendation to those living in the UK and the EU. Have an emergency preparedness pack that caters for the loss of water, gas, and electricity utilities at home, a cyber attack or conventional attack on those facilities. Then have a go bag, which that allows you to sort of get in the car and travel for 2 to 3 days on the move until you get to your destination. And finally, I would have a bug out bag. This is a survival bag, which you're more likely to be carrying if you're bugging out and you're on foot. This means you don't have your vehicle for shelter and to sleep in. So shelter should be considered, as well as your food, water, a stove, or means of making a fire at least. And this is where you're likely to be carrying those items such as the multi-tool and the survival knife, maybe an axe, obviously fire lighting kits, paracord, survival tins, which also might contain or should contain other items such as your sewing kit and your fishing kit, water collection kit, and obviously don't forget about your wash bag for hygiene and other items. Too many to cover in this already overstretched session. So as we finish off, this is a situation or possible options I'm suggesting. Loss of utilities at home. So a 72-hour minimum emergency preparedness box. If you have a car and you want or you have to leave, you can simply take the box with you and other items. If you have to leave your home on foot, then an emergency preparedness and survival bag is preferred, which will contain obviously more items, such as a tent, tarp, sleeping bag, stove, water, food, meds, etc. You will need to be able to survive out in the field and be self-sufficient. So, that's something you may have to consider. You may have a second location or second property. That could be a caravan, a holiday home, or similar. You can have supplies there and simply calculate the distance from home to your secondary location. Just calculate how long it's going to take you to travel there and also include the walk-in into the plan. So, again, depending on where it is, if it's 300 miles, you're not going to be factoring in walking to there. Once you have those metrics, though, you can better plan and, make sure that when you go, whether that's in a car or walking, you've got the right stuff in your pack. Right, listen, hopefully I haven't gone off too much of the subject here. What I'm trying to do is I don't want to. It could take me 20 seconds to go through the recommended list of items to put in the bag or the box or whatever it is. But I just want to give you some sort of scope on these items. Right, we're nearly there, guys. If we, as in this family, dropped into a situation such as a power cut, and I thought we were going to be talking about a couple of weeks or so. My plan would be to tell everyone in my family to turn their phones off. We would then only use one phone at a time until it was dead, and only sort of turn it on once or twice a day for a short period. Each of us in the household has sort of a phone, so that is 5 phones, and would last weeks if used as explained just now. So with that plan, I'm looking at what we would actually be using the phones for. So it's going to be communication with other family members and updates on important news. So we'll make sure that each of the 5 phones has a preferred news app on them. So as long as we don't have to, I mean, you're going to need some kind of internet, whether it's jumping onto your network provider for the data or whatever it is. But what I'm trying to say is, If there is a preferred app for news, I'd make sure that all five phones had that app downloaded, just to keep it all consistent. So when we're turning it on, we know exactly what we're doing. Keep the phone on for a short period of time, turn it off, and conserve the power. Just a quick one on shelter. Shelter and warmth are key, obviously. But if you're at home, then without heating, you're still going to be able to keep yourself warm, whether that be fully clothed in bed when it's cold or just a couple of extra layers during the day. If you have to bug out in your car, then your car becomes your shelter to a degree, depending on how many of you there are and what you're doing. Certainly for sleeping in, though, it's going to keep you out of the cold and the wet. If you're on foot, you're going to need to have a tarp of some sort, and preferably a tent for shelter. Again, the size of the tent will be determined by how many how many people are in the group. I've explained some of the key items that I'm thinking about at the moment, and the reason why I haven't expanded too much on this list is because we're concentrating on the main critical items first. This session is about, the items that you should have in your pack, with, no questions asked. But there's so much more, you're going to need to ensure that things, I suppose, are a little bit more comfortable for you. That could be a camping stove, so that you're not eating your tinned meals cold, or you can have a cup of tea or coffee to keep you warm and boost morale out in the field or under a tarp. Some of you might think about getting a small generator. This is at home, to provide you with power and light if the grid goes down at home. But obviously, with that, you'll need to factor in fuel. When we mentioned the pandemic, many of you will remember the panic buys in the supermarkets going on one with the toilet paper. It's an important consideration, of course, but there are alternatives. So, ladies and gents, I've just touched on a couple of important items you'll need to be sort of considering. But remember this, I have made suggestions for a family of five, um, but only sort of based on a power cut at home. Some of you might be thinking, well, that's nothing to worry about. We'll need to be without power for 72 hours before, appreciating the challenges and problems. So what I'm trying to say there is, if you know that there's going to be, if you know when the power cuts happens and it's going to be for 72 hours, psychologically it's easier to plan for that. You can prepare yourself for that, because after 3 days everything's going to be back to normal. But that's that's in the ideal world. That could easily not be the case. If you have to leave your home and bug out, then we've got another set of challenges. So, for example, if there is a radioactive event somewhere, I suppose, near you, and you're forced to evacuate, then where are you going and what are you doing? Hotels, family sort of come to mind, I suppose, so long as, they're not also affected by the same radioactive event. I'm not going to go into this one because it's more along the lines of the bug out bag, which you'll find it should contain more. Called it well, it's going to your bug out bag will contain important kit such as a shelter, sleeping bag, fire lighting, cooking kit, and stuff like that for outside. If you're at home, then you don't have to worry about those things. If you had to camp out for a couple of nights, how many of you, can actually deal with that situation? You're out there in the wild overnight during an SHTF situation that presents other threats, and that could be threats from other people potentially. And when was the last time, you made a fire outdoors? Sounds easy, doesn't it? Honestly, guys, this prepping business can be, sort of overwhelming, and I want to try and make it not so. This is my advice to you. Right, finished nearly. Just all I want to say, try and make time to either get online and see, what the likely threats are to you and your family at the moment in the country and location that you reside in first. Then with that, make plans on how you're going to deal with that and prepare for those threats. If you don't know where to start and you're only now sort of waking up to these threats, can I suggest that you watch the first 20 videos that I've done on the channel under the Let's Get Prepared playlist, sorry. They've been created sequentially. So what that means is that I've created them from 1 to 20 logically for a reason. So what you don't want to be doing is watching video 5 and then going to video 11 and then going back to video 2 and stuff like that. They've been created logically, sequentially for a reason. So if you're going to watch them, start at 1 and go through to 20. Um, in the playlist, we open up with an introduction into the events during the early stages of the war in Ukraine, followed by threats to the UK and how it sort of defends and sort of deters from such threats. We look at the possibility of counterforce and counter value targets here in the UK and simulate an attack on those locations in the form of a tactical nuke. Okay, so I've done videos on that. So if you want to know what that looks like, you can see that there. We discussed the release of preparedness booklets by numerous governments across Europe, which is what we've been sort of talking about through this video and the one before. And then we move on to the threats closer at home, that being yourself as a direct threat, and also those infamous panic buyers. So I've done a video on panic buyers and normality bias. I then discuss radiation shielding, shedding light on what that actually means, as most people assume that a 150 kiloton tactical nuke hitting an airbase will kill everybody in the UK. I debunk most of those illusions and thoughts, which should set your worries to rest, really, to be honest with you. I then discuss water and food preparation, which we've kind of touched on here. Different ways of sourcing the water, the 4 tiers of food. And then towards the end of the playlist, we discuss normality bias or ignorance, whereby most people are going through life choosing to ignore those dangers and those threats that they could be faced with. And there's a discussion also on SpaceX and what that means in terms of space warfare and how Elon's platform is sort of critical to national security. Finally, we talk about the UK being on a war footing, and the final video, I think, simulates a nuclear detonation on the US Air Force military base in Brize Norton, Oxfordshire, and what that would mean to anyone living in that area. I know for some of you, this is going to be a lot to take in, but once you have this lot on board, you would have put yourself and put your mind at ease, allowing you to then sort of concentrate on your preparedness plan. You cannot have a plan if you don't know what you're planning for, guys. Right. Thankfully, for you guys, that's enough of your valuable time that I've taken up. I wanted to talk about this 72-hour preparedness pack because the EU have announced to 450 million Europeans that they should be thinking about getting prepared for possible war against Russia. And they start with the 72-hour pack. Get yourselves military fit, healthy body, healthy mind, and pick up some new skills in survival and preparedness because you may one day need them and it might be sooner than you think.